All right, everyone. Bilal here from Train My Trainer. We're gonna meet with Albert today, who's at his gym. We're in his office at Physical Progression. This is technically Farmington Hills.
Farmington Hills.
Yeah. So Albert, I just want to connect with you in regards to what we're trying to establish in the trainer community and helping those that are entering the business or those that have been in the business a long time. And yourself as a veteran, our history. Uh, Why'd you get into business?
So first thing, as far as why I got into fitness, so growing up, I was always an athlete, football, basketball, even before organized sports, working out, being an athlete, that was always something I was interested in. And then when it came to getting into the industry, 2005, I attended the National Personal Trainer Institute, which is a trade school for training. So instead of going the college route, I got to solely focus on just training and learning the ins and outs of, exercise science, nutrition, building a fitness business. That's what the National Personal Trainer Institute specializes in. So I graduated from there in 2006, and then from 2006 all the way until 2012, I was more so a freelance trainer, if you will, working some dead-end jobs in between, just to make scraps, making sure I got enough money to facilitate the lifestyle I was living during that time from 2006 to 2012. 2013, that's when I got my first job at a big box gym. So I worked for Lifetime Fitness. And then it's good. I know we're going to chop it up, but
Yeah.
So 2013, I started working for Lifetime Fitness. And that kind of introduced me to the corporate side of fitness. So it wasn't just training. There was a lot of sales behind that, learning the lingo, how to properly run a consultation, how to sell yourself, working on a commission-based program, so it wasn't an hourly pay.
Would you say, right, obviously those first few years you talked about, obviously kind of figuring it out, working some jobs in between to help you get by, would you say that commission structure in the early days kind of forced you to enhance the ability? And I say that because now you see a lot of facilities that offer training jobs and will have a base hourly pay plus the commission, which I think is good because it gives some people, this day and age, kind of like that sense of security. But actually, the way you and I came up, everything was just commission, right? So you eat or get ate, and I think that forced us to enhance our game, kind of learn a lot faster, versus having that security blanket of, hey, I have my hourly, and then whatever I get override on the sale.
Yeah, so definitely the sink or swim nature of commission-based fitness, it'll open you up and oh shit, that was crazy. So
It's
commission,
different times, right? It's different times.
So commission-based. So that definitely forced me to get on my grind a little harder because not only was it commission-based, we worked on a draw system. So you would clock in for an hourly pay, but if your sales and service did not exceed the hourly pay, you would only get paid the hourly pay. So let's say you punched in for, $2,000 worth of time over a 2-week span, but you only had sales and service of $1,500, you would take the $2,000 that they gave you for the hourly, but then you would owe that $500 to the company. So there was an incentive for you to get above that threshold, what you were punching in for, because then they gave you more take-home pay.
Cut this out. Go like this. You got something hanging.
I got something?
Yeah. All right, it's going now. All right, cool. Yeah, that draw system I was like, oh, shit. I saw that draw system really chew some trainers up and spit them out because they could never get over that hump, right? And then I think in the business, if you went to an institute where it taught you solely, hey, like exercise science, how to train, the business standpoint, where a lot of people now are going to NASM and different certification processes, or they get their exercise science degree through college, and like, oh, I'm ready to help people, but never establish the people skills to be able to sell themselves, right? And I always preach you can be a great trainer and you'll make some money. You can be a great salesperson, you'll make some money. If you can do both, you'll make a lot of money.
Right.
And so I think it's important to say, hey, what was that journey like in those first few years for you to say, okay, hey, I'm delivering great sessions, or I need to work on the session, or I'm able to sell, but I'm not delivering here, kind of like what that change was for you?
As far as I would just put that towards, we're speaking about like elevating your game in a sense. So, it just got to a point feeling comfortable in what I was doing. So, always knew in the back of my mind I was a great trainer, practice what I preach. So that was one thing I used to my advantage. So I would say, I'm just thinking.
Yeah. I know I'm taking you way back.
Yeah. I guess the light bulb moment probably went off when I started looking at it as not just a job, but more of a career. So I think that's something that fitness professionals need to, solely distinguish between is if you just treat it like a job, you probably won't last. If you treat it like a career, it's something that in your mind, you'll start looking further ahead and how can I build my career? How can I build my profession? If you just look at it solely as, hey, I'm here, I'm training people session by session, and you don't look at it as a career, you're probably going to burn out quick. So once I took that transition of truly taking it on as a career versus a job, I would say that opened up my ability to sell a little bit more, because now I'm looking at it like this is how I'm going to build my lifestyle, everything I got to take care of. And if I just treated it like a job, I probably would have fizzled out and did something else.
I'd say, people can feel your intention, right? So when you're doing those consultations and people are being vulnerable to you, that's they're going to feel the intention of you and what you're going to deliver for them, right? It's a mutual partnership,
right,
when you're working with a client, but they buy into you first, so. And just as you talked about the career standpoint versus the job, talk to us about the onboarding process, right? When you're doing that consultation, whether it was what you learned in the institute or just through trial and error based on repetition. Because I think a lot of times trainers, when they come in, they're expecting that people are just going to be like, hey, take my money and train me. Versus we have to be able to convey a message of that buy-in, right? Whether it's accountability, whether it's the education, but people make decisions on emotion, right? So can we trigger that emotion and show them the light, per se?
Yeah, so as far as the early consults versus, what I grew into when I was doing consults, I would say early on I did too much talking. So instead of letting the client, kind of tell me what they need, I used to go into it, saying, hey, I know this, this is how smart I am. This is what I can do to help you. So over time, I learned if you can just tone that back a little bit and let them, tell their story, listen to what it is that they're trying to do. If you can just be quiet and listen, it makes it so much easier, because at the end, after they got done venting to me, and sometimes as a trainer, you're going to be like a therapist in a sense. So people will open up and tell you some real personal stuff. So, I've had people crying inside of those consultations, and they're going through something with the family, the significant other, things of that nature. So once I got to that point of talking less and listening more, at the end of those consultations, it was kind of just like me holding up a mirror and then just repeating everything that they told me. And that's how I was able to connect a lot better, because people at that point, they're like, he's truly listening to me. He's not so eager to tell me how much he knows and what this product is going to do and what this price point is this, how much is this session going to cost, how long they should do it. So I would definitely say talking less and listening more was one of the major key differences that allowed me to expand my business a little further.
The mirror analogy is strong. Based on your tenure in the industry, would you find you as the individual have continued to invest in yourself, right, in whatever shape, whether it's continuing education, whether it's saying, hey, finding those that are doing something that appeal to you and say, okay, hey, how can I implement that? I think where a lot of times fitness professionals get in the industry and then let ego overtake them to where it's actually hindering them from expanding their business, right? So maybe talk about for yourself, as long as I've known you, you've always been, you soak it up wherever it comes from, and if it applies, it fits. If it doesn't, you move on.
Yeah, as far as personal growth, so definitely reinvesting into myself, whether it be through, mentorship, and some of those forms of mentorship, even though I didn't necessarily like everything about the corporate fitness job that I had, some of those meetings, those were designed to help me become better at what it was that I was doing.
Yeah.
So, in the grand scheme, I look back on it, probably wasted a lot of time in meetings, but, I had some key takeaways, because I would say I know a lot, but I don't know everything. And if I get to the point where I know everything, that means that there's nothing else for me to learn. And if that happens, I'll be done. So I'm always, looking to reinvest into myself from a knowledge standpoint, running my own business. So reinvesting into the business side, which really has little to do with the exercise science side of things. So, yeah.
You touched base on the mentorship and the meetings, and for you, and even in that time in the corporate game versus transition, being your own independent business and servicing people, was there a time where like, what, I don't know if I want to do this anymore? You talked about making that shift as far as career, but sometimes people will get caught up in the cheese per se, like Eric Thomas will say, and kind of get distracted from like what that actual purpose is. So is there ever a time where like it might be a phase out for me, and kind of what allowed you to just take that runway and make it what it is today?
As far as getting to a point where I thought about quitting, to be honest, like that's never something that's crossed my mind. And that ties back to, me always being an athlete. And even before this became more of a career for me, I would say I was more of like a fitness enthusiast. So I was always into taking care of myself no matter what. Now, the degree at which I do it now is much greater than in my earlier years, my late teens and early 20s. But taking care of myself, I don't see a time where I'm not going to do that. So having the job in fitness, I would say it was never, it was never going to happen where I was just going to say, hey, it's time to pack it up. Now, as far as always being in the corporate structure, I did know at some point that I did want to get out of that, because it got to a point after I built up really good rapport with a lot of my clients and a lot of my following, you know, people would come to me, and I just started to realize they're not here for this building that I work out of. They're here for me. So once I got to that point of really recognizing they're going to follow me wherever I want to go, or whatever I do, they'll always look to me for guidance through health and nutrition, I knew I could kind of take off and do my own thing. So I would say, if there was like a regret, if you will, probably not starting what I'm doing now sooner.
Would that be the message you give your younger self?
Yeah, most definitely. I probably, like I said, corporate fitness, it was good. I learned a lot. I learned how to sell, you know, big ticket, small ticket, connect with people from all walks of life. But I probably stayed there maybe 2 years too long. I probably should have made the transition about 2 years.
2 years prior.
Yeah.
And now, you know, being an independent operator, doing what you do, you know, what is that challenge like? You know, I think those that are getting certified or getting the education to get into the industry, as health and fitness is going to continue to grow, the market's going to continue to get better, especially with the pharmaceutical plays behind it now, right? So that combination of both, where people feel like, you know, they can prescribe on that side of it too, and be able to talk about it. You know, what is a piece of advice you'd give to younger trainers just getting started, whether they want to go independent out the gates or go into, you know, a corporate box and establish some foundation?
Yeah, a message to newer trainers, you know, whatever that classification is within your first year or two, your first 3 to 5. I would say really focus on building relationships.
Yeah.
Okay, because you know, there's a saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know, right?
Absolutely.
Now, you know, it's cliche to hear that it's not what you know, it's who you know, but you need a combination of both.
Yeah.
And so what I've learned through my experiences, I paired those two things together, and that's what helped me expand the business to where it's at today. Because when it was time to look at buildings, you know, I had a commercial real estate agent within my network of people that I trained. When it was time to, you know, have a lawyer look over my paperwork, making sure everything was structured right, I had a lawyer within my wheelhouse. When it was time to, you know, get layouts and blueprints and how I wanted everything set up, I had engineers in my warehouse, you know, inside of my
Your network.
network.
Yeah.
So if I didn't build those relationships earlier on, not that I couldn't do this, but the process probably would have gotten a lot more complicated. So
that confidence behind it too.
exactly.
Yeah.
So those growing relationships that I built those working for corporate fitness. And then when it got time to do my own thing, you know, it made the transition so much easier because I had people inside of each industry that I needed, even insurance, you know,
business
personal insurance, business
liability,
insurance, contents. Like, you got to insure all this stuff in here. Yeah. So I got an insurance agent that I trained. So it's like almost any and everything that I needed to make the business, not that it's easy, everything that I needed to make the business run a little smoother. I had a good plethora of people within those different networks.
I think too, right? If you're confident in your ability, what you do, right? Train the people. But now, from a business standpoint, and taking that leap, having those people is just reinforcing what you're trying to do, and giving yourself more confidence. Saying, "Hey, I can do this." Right? It's they say, you know, law of attraction, but there's no attraction without action, right? So, and you know, you put all those things into motion to be able to establish your own place and continue delivering for the people that have been working with you, and then those that are coming to work with you now, right? So, and that's why I asked about trainers getting into the industry now? Because we know, like I said, the market's going to continue getting bigger, and ego, especially in the day of social media and instant gratification,
Right.
all the above, it's where, I know based on my time and experience with you, where you can walk into any facility and within 60, 90 days, that runway of yours is you're flying, right? But that's because you've done it time and time again. You've had that reinforcement, and you say, hey, I'm gonna be able to reflect off my early stages, and you had some of that mentorship in the early days, and you were accountable in that sense. Where now I see the burn and turn, right? One place to another, and that's where that train my trainer. I want to establish a community to where we can take people under our wings and give them that mentorship, because we don't want it to kind of like real estate agents. They say about 90% of agents are out of the industry within the first year, right? I think we can make so much impact, but we need to get back some of that community, right? So, what's on Al's scope for the next 6 months, next year, next 2 years? Like, what's the plan of attack?
I mean, I definitely got some stuff in the works. That
secret. He works in silence,
yeah,
baby.
I got some stuff in the works as far as expanding the business, if you will. More so the brand.
Yeah.
That's how I look at it now. What I do as far as one-on-one training, one-on-one nutrition, counseling, classes, all that is part of a brand.
Yeah.
And so, kind of to piggyback on what we were talking about with the younger trainers, look at yourself as a brand. Don't look at yourself just solely as a trainer. That's how you end up going from spot to spot, and then people say, oh, I know you used to work at this gym. I know you used to work at this gym. Yeah. You kind of just look like somebody who just bounces place to place to just train people. If you establish a brand, people will recognize you as a brand. They don't recognize you just as a trainer.
Yeah. I think it's that association to it, right? And for you and what you've done, physical progression for those that want to follow him on social media, YouTube, all the above, right? He's going to deliver education. He's going to give you the right type of content, not just for show, right? So really be able to set yourself up and learn something, right? We can do stuff for flash, we can get under a bench and lift some heavy weights or squats or do something silly, but really setting people up for the future to where they're going to learn, be educated, not hurt themselves.
Right.
But then same thing, whether this brand picks up and leaves Michigan, goes elsewhere, still be able to deliver. For yourself, is there anybody that you take under mentorship? We don't have to talk names, but have you embodied that in this space?
Definitely, and I would say it's kind of a blend, but a little more on the business side. Okay, because like we spoke about before we got on camera, plenty of trainers will think, hey, my time here is done. I need to go pick up, and I need to start my own gym. I need to go online. I need to do X, Y, and Z. I just need to get out of here. So I've talked with and quote unquote coached other people who are making that transition, but really helping them on the business side. Okay. So that way they don't get screwed up into thinking, hey, I got this space, and now that I got this space, all these people are going to come. Okay, so that goes back to the brand building. Like, you got this space, and now what is it that you're going to offer? Is it just a space where you're solely going to do training? You need to find a way to monetize the business. Yeah. So that's a big component that I've kind of just been helping some other people with. Open up different avenues so you don't get caught up in just all I do is deliver sessions, aka all I do is trade my time for money. And when you do that, there's only so many hours in the day. So 24 hours, if you train people 10, 11, 12 hours a day, 5-6 days a week, 50, 60 hours,
that's rough.
You are going to get burned out. Yeah. So you gotta you got to look at it and say, what can I do within my brand where I can start to still grow the business but generate more revenue without adding additional man hours. So that's been one of the keys, is helping other trainers, build their business, not necessarily helping them so much with training and nutrition.
Yeah. So would you say, I mean, the way you just segmented that, right? The revenue streams that come behind the not trading the time for money, but necessarily like delivering results, right? Because it's just like anything else. I mean, if the results are delivered, and it has to be the right buy-in from the clients, that they're going to continue spending the money. They're going to continue showing up.
Right.
And if they get phased out of one revenue stream, how do we move them to another revenue stream and keep them within the life cycle, right? So, and then have you found that that's probably where the trainers kind of been one toe in, one toe out, and not establishing like, okay, hey, I'm doing a little bit of servicing here, I'm doing a little bit of online, a little bit of nutrition, but not really forging their bread and butter.
Yeah, definitely. And to kind of piggyback off of that, I would say, master what you're good at first. Okay, see, this is the important part.
Yeah.
Master what you're good at first, and whatever takes up the most of your time, charge the premium for that. So that way, the time that you're pouring in, it's being reciprocated properly through the money that you're making. And then these other things, these other avenues, it doesn't mean don't pour into them and grow them, but if you don't master what you're really good at first, you're going to find yourself just doing too much, and you get away from the bread and butter. Now, the bread and butter, whatever that is, it might be online coaching, it might be one-on-one training, it might be small group, it might be large group. Whatever that is, what you're really good at, master that first, so that way you have a nice foundation. And then you start to build the other systems out on top of that. And those other systems they're just kind of help facilitate in case your bread and butter slows down. So that's what guys have to realize, guys and girls. Get really good at the bread and butter, charge a premium for it, monetize yourself, build out on top of that, and that's just, it doesn't mean that it won't make a ton of money. Some of these other things that you might do, they might generate a lot of income, and it might take over the bread and butter. That's a premium.
You need to make the shift.
On the back end, if that bread and butter slows down and now you got X, Y, and Z to help, then you don't feel, don't feel the crunch, like, how am I gonna get the groceries? How am I gonna buy the diapers? How am I gonna get the cat food, the dog food? How am I gonna pay my car note, right? All that type of stuff.
Feel the pressure. What's one take in the industry that you don't agree with? Right. I was last guy I interviewed. He said the calories in, calories out, and he made the point of like, hey, if you eat 2,000 calories of, avocados versus 2,000 calories of steak, like it's, like thermodynamics, and I know you've talked about that playing into effect. He goes, we gotta be a little more specific. So I'd like to ask, what's the take that like, or something that, doesn't sit right, or maybe it's just, or something like when people say, "Hey, a pound of muscle weighs more than a pound of fat," right? And we're like, "No, a pound is a pound." What are you talking about?
Right. I would say, there's plenty as far as like something that I disagree with within the fitness industry is how easy it is to take care of yourself and get in shape, right? So I think, especially with social media, and it's like I call it's like a microwave society, right?
Yeah.
Meaning people think they can just pop it in the microwave real quick, and a couple minutes later, you're going to get the results, right? But it's really oven baked.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So I think that
dropping gems.
I think that notion of, hey, if you just do this 30-day challenge or this 60-day challenge or this 90-day challenge. Now, those are good stepping stones, right?
Yeah.
You get someone into the realm of they're starting to do the right thing. So you're using that 30, 60, 90-day challenge, 75 hard, whatever it may be.
Warming up the oven.
Yeah, you're using that as a stepping stone to eventually get where you want to get to. But a lot of times people just make it sound like, oh, I got this 8-week program that's going to change your life. I got this 12-week program that's going to change your life. And, you know, it's just not that simple. It's day in, day out, consistent, long,
monotonous,
long
yes.
term. And it's doing the boring stuff. That's
Yeah.
another thing that pet peeve of mine. The social media wave, like they throw so many fads at people, and people, you know, I have to have these conversations with them where they come to me and they're like,
Hey, how come we're not doing this?
You know, I saw somebody doing this, or if I do this for 30 days, this, and it's like, bro, that's just somebody selling you something. You know, take it from someone who, you know, I train 4, 5, 6 times a week mostly, but I've been doing that. We're talking about decades.
Yeah.
So people will think like, you know, how can I get like you
Yeah.
in 90 days? And it's like, bro, I've been doing it for decades. It's not going to happen in 90 days, but you can be 90 days better than where you are today.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
That's the right mental shift.
Yeah, just that kind of microwave society of like it's supposed to happen quick, and you know, no hate on any of the influencers or people that kind of push that. You know, however they make their money, that's how they make their money. But
Don't be Ashton Hall.
it's my job to, you know, show people like the real side of it, because people will sign up for these Michael B. Jordan and Hugh Jackman workouts and be like, I'm going to look like them at the end of this 75 days. It's like, no, you'll be 75 days better if you stuck with the program, but you're not going to look like them.
No, that is prime time. What's one final note you want to send our community out with?
Yeah, just reaching back and touching on building the rapport with people. Try not to burn any bridges.
Yep.
Because you never know when you're going to need that one client that you mishandled. Now, as far as when I'm talking about mishandling the client, it could be showing up late to the sessions, not hearing them out as far as like what they want to do, or, you know, they got aches and pains and you just try to push them through it and you just always want to kill them. Try not to burn any bridges and build a rapport with your clients. And that way, when you do start to make pivots and shifts, you'll find out that person that you treated well for all those years
Will ride with you.
is going to be able to help you in some aspect in whatever it is that you may want to do. And it might not even be in fitness. So plenty of guys that we used to work with, you know,
made big shifts.
and they're doing totally different things. But, you know, they're still good friends of mine. So when I talk to them, it'll be like, you know, hey, that guy that I used to train, he's the one that got me into this. You know, that girl that I used to train, her mother, her sister, cousin got me this job. So don't burn the bridges.
No, that's so true, because my older brother, one of his clients who's owns Edward Jones financial advisor. My brother still trains people, but actually minimize how many people he trains, because he got hired by his client and took a Series 7 test and all the different tests to be a financial advisor now, and works for him. And is in the process where that guy's eventually going to retire. My brother's going to take over his office. And so you nailed it. All right, it's just treat people well, even if they phase themselves out. You never know when you're going to make that phone call. And I think that's where you have to establish your own community in whatever you do, right? So whatever your line of work is, because there's a time and a place. So be able to call on it. Yeah.